The best for
Oh
last.
my God, that's a lot of pressure. Um, all right, so this talk is really a continuation of my last talk that is a little bit more based around the pitch deck itself and some follow up. Um, so I'm going to start very high level and then I'm going to show you guys and gals different decks. And, one of the things I think is there's always, a lot of opinions. I think everybody that has raised one venture capital round has an opinion on exactly how a deck should be. And maybe everybody's not a fair term, but a lot of people do. And what I'm going to try to say is I do think that there's certain principles that you should uphold. And some of them I discussed last time, and some of them I'll repeat. Many of them will be different. And then I'm going to kind of get into the deck itself and show you how I would do a deck, and then also show you some real other decks, because I think there's both an art and a science to building a pitch deck. So the first focus or principle that I think you need to remember, and I think I spoke about this last time, but I think it's an important point, is that you need to, every time you get into a meeting with a venture capitalist, you need to think about there's actually three things you're selling to them. You're selling to them that you're a strong founder or CEO. You're selling to them that you have a strong team, and you're selling to them that you have a strong product. And I think the hard part is you need to sell to them all three of those things at once. And I think in our last talk, I spoke about straight line selling. So you start with zero credibility and you want to move the needle to the right till you get a 10 in all three. And it's a hard thing to do because you're trying to balance it. Um, and this, quite frankly, isn't a class on digital content and social media, but this is where reputation management and credibility building that you could build online can help you move the needle even before you get into those meetings. But you must be thinking of ways that you could sell not just your product, but your team and yourself. And along with the team, what I think you need to remember, what you're also saying is this is where you say that you're ultimately a company. You're not just a project, you have a team. And so finding ways to say things like our CTO did a great job building a scalable technology and working with Amazon to ensure that we have a product that truly will be scalable around the world. Um, Finding ways to plug yourself are all things that you need to be thinking about. The second focus, and this is more of a reminder, is don't suck at email and presentations. In terms of email, what that really means is being short and concise, usually not using a lot of adjectives. So whenever you write something, just go in and look at where the adjectives are. And just remember that Donald Trump killed adjectives, which saying things like amazing and incredible and all these things, just take them out and be short and provide facts and straight and to the point. Another way to not suck at email is remember that VCs are busy. And I'm actually going to show you some emails. So using good use of things like making them bold and easy to read. But I think the most important way to not suck at emails is to respond. and to respond quick and fast. Because what you're really doing with a VC is interviewing each other to make sure it's a good fit. But I will tell you that VCs like founders that respond quickly and to the point. Presentations. I think not a lot, but some founders will outsource their presentations to a graphic designer. And I think there's pros and cons to that. I think the challenge if you do that is it certainly may look better than if you did it, but you really need to be making ongoing changes consistently. I would rather you just get really good at PowerPoint, Keynote, Figma, and I'm going to actually show you a new one that I just found that's free. Find that jam where you can just make presentations and make them quickly, because your deck is really never done. Another, I think, key point, a lot of times entrepreneurs will tell me that they need to dial down their passion. And I would just tell you that follow-up and passion can't be overdone. Follow-up and passion can't be overdone. Nobody's got funded for following up too much or being too excited in their product. But they have gotten not funded because they lacked follow-up and they lacked passion. So I would over-index on passion and follow up. What I mean by this is a lot of times entrepreneurs will over gamify when to follow up with a VC. Oh, this is a top tier VC. I don't want to push him or her. Number one, VCs get it. Anyone that's been in the industry for more than a week realizes that you're going to follow up and you're going to be persistent. And they would much rather see someone be persistent than passive. I do think that there is a line of being a jerk, and you certainly don't want to go into that territory. But I would just follow up as much as you possibly can without crossing that line into being a jerk and being rude. But don't overthink it, is my point. I said this in our last chat that the object of the meeting with the VC is not to get funded. The object of a meeting with the VC is not to get funded. The object of the meeting with the VC is to get to the next meeting. The object of the meeting is to get to the next meeting. And, you know, this statement is a little bit loaded, obviously, but I think it's important. And what this also means is if the object of the meeting is to not get funded, then the object of the pitch deck is also not to get funded. The object of the pitch deck is to get a meeting. And then once you're in the meeting, the object is to get to the next meeting. So this manifests itself in a few different ways. Number one is if you're in a meeting with a VC and they've agreed to a second meeting already and you got the time and date set, what you're thinking now is how you get the heck out of there and how you end the meeting as gracefully as possible. And we've all been there where we get over adrenalized by the excitement of a VC and we want to keep it going and we want to keep it going. And maybe they'll just wire me the money right on the spot. The reality is that's not how it happens. So once you got that meeting set, the objective is to get to the next meeting. And once you have that, the meeting is over. And there's no reason to keep talking. There's no reason to keep selling. You've succeeded. You've met the KPI. The other thing to think about is oftentimes you'll get into a meeting with a VC and you won't get a meeting set, but they'll say something like, Derek, this was awesome. Please send me this deck you went through. Please send me your financials, or they may ask for a data room. You still want to, the objective is not to send them more stuff. The objective is to get to the next meeting. So you need to say something like, Mr. or Mrs. VC, I'll absolutely send you what you're looking for. But, you know, we have some unique nuances. Can we can we set a meeting where I can go through those financials with you and go through this deck with you to see if you have any questions? Push for that meeting. And certainly a lot of times they'll say, no, just send it over and we'll go from there. Well, still, when you send it over, close by asking for that meeting, because that is your objective, to get to the next meeting. The two acronyms that get talked about is FOMO and FOOLS. And I think there's enough discussed on FOMO. FOMO stands for fear of missing out. This is a way of creating urgency. I think one of the things that I don't see early stage and first time entrepreneurs do enough of in terms of FOMO is, if you get some commits from other investors, tell the VC you're in the meeting with that you have commitments. Tell them exactly who it is, how much money it is. That is a traction point in terms of your success. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I cutting out, or am I good?
We hear you great.
Okay,
yes,
good.
You're good.
Yeah, no worries. All right. Perfect. So FOMO, when you get traction with investors, share it. Share with investors. Tell them by names. Yes, it's a good thing to have other investors call each other. It's a way to create urgencies. I think the bigger thing, though, is FOOLS. So FOOLS stands for fear of looking stupid. And I think this is something that VCs are really worried about, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And I think sometimes where I see this manifest itself is no VC wants to make a bet on an idea that is going to make them look bad. And so you need to balance your brilliant, innovative bug to do things differently with things that are going to freak out a venture capitalist and seem so far in right field that it's just not achievable or possible. And so some of the things you can do is, sure, you can have a unique business model. Sure, you can have innovative pricing. You don't have to do things like everybody else. In fact, most unicorns or most game-changing companies have not had standard formulas or standard templates. And like, that's possible. And you can do that. But you also need to find ways that you're like everybody else. So if you have a unique business model, if you have a unique idea, find as many things as possible that you can do like everybody else. Whatever the accounting software that startups use in Vegas, use it. What the email systems, like, don't try to get cute on everything. The other thing is, when you're doing something unique and different, find an equivalent or a metaphor or a benchmark, even if it's from another industry. So famously in the United States, we have a shipping company called Federal Express, FedEx. And they created a new way to send and receive packages away from the post office. And they had distribution centers and they had trucks, and this was totally different when it first came out. But the way that they described it, rather than going through several slides or several paragraphs of text to explain their distribution model, they said it's just like banking. We use a hub and spoke model where we have centers where the hub of the packages come, and then we have trucks that come off it, and it's just like banking. So they found an equivalent in another industry where they could quickly explain it. So, maybe you're not a software as a service, which is very common, but maybe you're banking as a service, or you're lending as a service, or you're blank as a service, or finding whatever that metaphor you could use where it's simple for people to grasp and doesn't come off too far-fetched is very important, especially with unique ideas. A couple other points is story and conviction matters. I think this has been talked about enough, but it just needs to be reminded. What is the story? What's going to give me goosebumps? How does this ultimately manifest itself? And the reason why this also matters is, I think this takes me to my second point, is you're not just pitching to a venture capitalist for this round. You're pitching for several rounds. In the mind of a VC, most startups to get to $1 billion valuation are going to raise somewhere between 70 and $100 million. And so what's running through the mind of the VC is, can this startup, this CEO, this team, and this product be on the journey of a company that's going to be a unicorn? And that typically means you're going to raise more than one round of funding. So even if the VC might know your story already, if you have not had the opportunity to tell your entire story, I think it's wrong, because you need to pitch to them, not just for this round, but for them to understand how this will translate into additional rounds of fundings. I think I spoke about this last time, but getting to traction as fast as possible is super vital. You need to open with a compelling problem or a compelling opportunity. What is your solution? Show me how it works. In best case, show me with a demo. Show me, Mr. CEO, how easy your product is. Don't tell me, show me, and then show me the traction you have. And quite frankly, if it's your first pitch and it's going well, a lot of times you'll get stuck there because you've shown them how it works, and then you've got around the traction discussion. You're only going to get 30 minutes for that first meeting. I think one of the other things, and I'll kind of show you this, but that gets missed a lot, is why this is valuable now. Like, why should this be done now? Why is this the culmination of everything going on in the world on why we need this product now? And if you don't have a slide on this, and I'll show you how we do this, you're leading it to the VC and the VC firm to make their own hypothesis, because they will do it if you don't. It is a key question they are asking. And then with this question, I believe I brought this up last time, you then need to be asked, okay, all the stars are aligned for us to bring this product to market, and here's why we are the best team in the world to bring this idea to market and why we're the best. Or if it's not why we're the best in the world, on why we've come together, not just because they were the most convenient. There's a reason, and it's part of the story, and it's part of the importance and the DNA of this company. I spoke about it earlier, but always remember how many people see VCs pitch. I think this is pretty obvious, but it is 6 to 8 a day. So a lot of this you see in poor follow-up. A VC will say, send me your deck and financials. You'll send them the deck the next morning. Dear Jack, thanks for the meeting. Here's the deck and financials you asked for. I have no idea who you are or what this was. I might not even open it for 3 days. So now I've seen, if that's 3 days and I see 6, maybe I've seen 25 companies since your pitch. And, so remember in emails, quick summary, what did they like? Here's the deck you asked. And I'd love to meet to discuss it or speak on the phone, because we have certain things, certain nuances, because the object is to get to that meeting, not to send them stuff. And as I said before, your deck is never done. It's always a work in progress. And, that's just something you kind of need to get used to. All right. So before I go into decks, let me show you a couple things in terms of email. So here is a way to ping a VC. So everybody on this call, I'm sure, has been in a situation where a VC disappears. I think rather than asking them, hey, what's going on? Hey, can we have a call? Giving them updates that are compelling. Again, updates around traction. We've added X traction in volume or X traction in sales. We've expanded to boom, boom, boom. And here's a draft press release. I always send draft releases to VCs. It makes them feel special. Like even if you've already published it, make them feel like here's a read ahead. They're getting new information. And then just, again, expansion to 26 countries is going well, blah, blah, blah. I think, it's our hope that with your capital, we can fuel the fire. Let me know where we stand. So something like that rather than just a straight update. The other thing in terms of updates is we believe, and I believe, that every single startup should send monthly updates to potential investors, mentors, champions of what you're doing. And so if you're not doing that, I would start. I would say I've seen very few companies get funded that don't send monthly updates. So I'm certainly know it's possible, but I don't have results on this, but I would say you're much, much more likely if you're sending monthly updates than if you're not. Here's another good use of email and not sucking at it, using bold, even though it's on the longer side. Again, thanks for your time. And I wanted to follow up on a few quick things. This case, the company is Xcoop, is best positioned to disrupt current archaic players for several reasons, and giving those reasons. And then down here, what's being discussed is our current projections are not taking into account our expansion into US, Africa, Philippines, and China. And the reason this point is important is because VC stands for vulture capitalists. And what you're playing into here is their constant desire to get a discount. So you're hinting at is that you're valuing yourself and they're valuing you based on financials. And there's, 3 or 4 major geographical regions that are not being taken into account, which means you're getting a discount. So it's just a good way to ping that this is a good value for your investment. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is kind of go through a kind of sample deck. And then just give me 1 second. Can you guys see this? It should say, well, it's purple now. It should say company name, yeah? Okay. All right. So some of these things I'm going to skip, and then I want to get to kind of actual decks. But I think, I haven't seen a whole lot of entrepreneurs lose funding rounds because of their opening deck or their opening slide. But some of the things that I would tell you that I don't like on an opening slide, because you do judge a book by its cover, is a lot of extra like disclaimers and dates and names and the word pitch deck. You don't need to put any of that. Just put the name of your company, maybe the logo and one line, and then that's it. If your lawyers have told you that you need to have a disclaimer, I would ask them if that could be the last slide. There's no reason why it has to be right here on the front or right there on even the second slide. I sometimes see it. I would just make it the last slide if your lawyers are telling you really need to do it. But again, no distractions, clean, a one line, hit them with the gut. Now, some people say you should do like X for Y or, whatever, like the Uber for laundry or whatever the case may be. I personally don't like those analogies. I think one line that is original, that sets the tone for who your company is better. Okay. What is the problem? You guys all know this. I don't know why the parenthesis isn't there, but I think that this has been beat enough. And then we go into then what is your solution? Sometimes people say do problem, solution, and then what your company does. I think that's a waste of slide. So I would just do what is the problem you're addressing and what is my solution? Because I've seen too many times where it's like the problem is there's lots of traffic in Nigeria. The solution is that we create a new traffic light. Oh, our company has a new traffic light that has this mission. I would just say problem and then our solution, because I think it cuts down on time and you don't have a lot of a VC's attention. And I would just get right to it. And then I would show, if you can, in best case, the CEO could do a demo, a live demo, even if it's not slick, like close the slides and do a live demo and show what your software can do. And don't tell me. Just like I told you to get good at presentations and emails, you should get good as the CEO doing demo. If you're not capable of doing it as the CEO, then bring somebody that is. That's the kind of number 2 option. If you can't show a demo because it's just not technically ready, then a video would be the next thing. If you don't have a video, the ability to show a demo or have someone else show the demo, then what you should do is you should do a case study. And you should do a before and after. So do something like a user case journey, like meet Jack. Before Tinder, Jack had no girlfriends. Then he swiped for 30 minutes and was able to get a date when the other side swiped right as well. And because of that, Jack went from no dates every week to 5 dates. So show like a before and after user journey, and you don't need a completed product to do that. But you're still, in a sense, showing me in my mind, not just telling me about your product. And then go into all the benefits, 4, 5, 6 benefits. Maybe more, maybe less, it depends, but not too many, more than 1 page. And then get to your traction. So let's kind of back up quickly. Opening slide, problem, what is your solution? Show me, don't tell me. What are your benefits? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's your traction? List 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, this should all be pretty clear. Now, if everything's going well, a lot of times, let me see if there's some notes I had here if you guys are totally confused. I think most people understand what traction is, but they don't understand often what their traction is. Traction, my definition of traction is what is the evidence you have that confirms your idea is any good. What is the evidence you have that confirms your idea is any good? Sometimes, and in a best case scenario, you have sales. In an even better case scenario than sales or users, you have growth in that department and you're growing at a percentage. Sometimes you've signed up partners. Sometimes you've done interviews and you have 100 interviews. I met someone doing a dating app a month ago that went on 650 dates to learn about the product. In a lot of ways, that's traction. Some of you have people that have been to great colleges or experience in other startups. That is also traction. You need as much of you as you can to show that you have a good idea and that the proof that you have around that idea. It could be pre-sales or signups or social media traction. As much as you can show that your idea is good, not just that your mother or father like it. We actually spoke about this last time, but your market should be large. You should do it in pictures. I think the big thing is if you're saying that you want to build a unicorn, you should be in a market that allows for multiple unicorns. And if you're in a market where there's only going to be one unicorn, it makes it a lot more risky. Okay. So trends and opportunities, and I'll show you how this slide looks because I don't always see it. In fact, I don't usually. But this is the why now slide. What are the trends and opportunities you're seeing now? If you had an NFT startups, you would be able to say there's this trend in NFTs. And don't assume that an investor has been following all the trends in NFTs. Find the most compelling trends that, McKinsey or Deloitte or another big consulting firm says by the year 2026, this percentage of art will be in the form of NFTs. And whatever the case may be, answer that story, why this is needed now. Business model, it's just what is your main revenue model? This could be as simple as we are a SaaS subscription model. We charge $35 per month per customer. Go to market, we spoke a lot about last time. I'm not going to touch too much on it, other than usually it's not detailed enough. And that's what we spoke about last time. And I'll show you some other examples. Okay, so here's an example of a competitive slide. This got really trendy. There's another one where you have the 4 boxes right here. That came out of MBA programs. Look, this right side of the slide, regardless of the format you use, is really just there to help you sell yourself and show that you understand the industry. That is the only thing that it's for. The most important part of this slide is this statement here, is what your true edge is or what makes you unique and different. You have to, one of the main things that you need to make sure that you get across to an investor, if they learn anything other than your traction, is why this is needed now and why your solution is different and better than what is on the market. Why are you different? Why are you going to be better than what's on the market? Oftentimes, entrepreneurs expect VCs to connect those dots, and that's simply not a good idea. You control the narrative, you plant the seeds, you tell them why you are different. Okay, team, why you are the best team in the world. Tell them, or why your team has come together. Another word that I like to use is this startup is the culmination of our careers, or the culmination of 4 years of studying in college and then two 2 more years of researching what consumers want to disrupt fintech. Why is it, you answered the why now, but why, and why you're unique, but why is this the team to bring it to market? It should not be, well, we came up with the idea, or, we happen to know each other. That doesn't fly. Roadmap, we spoke about last time. And, I don't think this is ever detailed enough. Sometimes I just see dots on a slide. How are you actually going to do the things that you do? Oh, okay, good. All right, so, and then what we do is we have a future directions slide. And this is like what's next for the future. And this is where you could be what I call a little blinky star. So everything that you've been talking about, 1 through 13, is what you're going to do in this funding round. But this is your one chance to say, like, where is the world going? And what are the other products or solutions this could pivot into in the future? So it's just giving them how you're thinking about this business in the future. And then I would do key investment metrics. And this is just a summary of the 4 or 5 reasons why you have an amazing product. And then I would have financials. A lot of times people are scared to have financials. I don't know where that comes from. If you want to leave out financials, that's fine. I think just put them in there, show some projections. And I think what's also important is you can combine the slides, so you can have a chart and then have your key metrics like this on the same slide, or you can have it separate. But the one thing I will tell you is you as a CEO should be able to talk through your financials on a high level and at least be able to focus on 5 or 6 key metrics. You don't need to know them all. And a good thing to say to a VC is the 5 or 6 metrics I know is this, but you should know your customer acquisition cost, your customer lifetime value. At what point will you be break even? What are your margins and what do you make per sale? Figure out what are those 4, 5, or 6 things that you're going to know by heart or be able to talk through without having, a finance person do the talking for you, because you ultimately are the CEO. And then we do funding requirements. The funding requirements, which I think gets missed the most, is you need to say how much you're raising. And there's a debate whether you should put your valuation or not. Let me come back to that. But I think the big thing is you need to know what you're going to achieve. What are the 3 things that you're going to achieve? This many users, this much revenue, this many partners, or, what are those 3 big things that you're fundraising for and that you're going to achieve? That is less relevant to me than like what percentage you're going to spend on marketing and team and this little pie thing that some people do. I want to know that you have a clear plan on what you're trying to achieve, and then I'll ask questions on how you're going to get there. And if you want to have the pie, you can. As far as whether you put the amount or not, I think like so much in life is it depends. And so I think if it's an early round and you're just going to do a safe, you can just say you're going to do a safe. If you've been venture backed before or you've already been priced, I would just put the valuation. I'm a big proponent of leading with transparency. And, I don't totally understand the downside of people seeing your valuation. But another time you could leave it out, and I think this is totally fine in early rounds, but it does take a little bit of I don't know, guts or boldness, is maybe you just don't know your valuation. And I would argue that that's not such a bad thing. What's more important is you need to know your business, know your industry, and know the amount of money you need. But if you don't know your valuation, there's nothing wrong with saying to a VC, like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. VC, you see these deals all the time. What do you think it's worth? You're the expert. I mean, I know how much I need to run my business. I know what my top line numbers are. I don't necessarily know the industry as well as you. I'd be curious to what you think we would be valued at. And a lot of times, the reason why I say it, you need to be bold, is VCs will almost trap you and push you into saying your valuation. You can just say, I really don't know. What do you think? I think of you as the expert. I heard you do lots of deals like these. I'm sure you have some thoughts, and then really take it from there. That is a strategy. So I want to give me 1 second. What I want to do now is, before I go through some decks, I can't see you guys. Does anyone have any questions whatsoever about pitch decks? Anything I've gone through or not gone through? If one of you has the question, I promise somebody else has the same question. They're just introverted versus being extroverted. Okay, so no one has any question. All right, no worries. So let me just kind of go through some decks very quickly, and I'll post this, and you can have access to these. So the first thing I would tell you is all these decks I've shown you were funded, and all of them have things that I like and things that I don't like. And that should give you comfort that I think oftentimes there's this desire to have a perfect deck, but perfect decks just don't exist. And I think we put a lot of emphasis around the decks, but I kind of hope or wish that more emphasis was put around answering questions in emails. So I would tell you that you certainly want to put the best deck you can forward, but I wouldn't lose so much sleep that it prevents you from A, getting traction in your company, and B, answering questions succinctly, because that's important as well. So here is an example of, well, number one is I hate the name of this company, Biddies. It sounds like disease. They're an advertising platform that bids on ads, but it's not very well named. I also don't really love the design. I do think they open well with a problem. The one thing that I like is oftentimes I see decks where it's the first slide says problem, and then the second slide says solution. You've wasted space. What I would put at the top of every single slide is a high level takeaway of what is the so what of the slide. So if I'm a VC and I only have a minute and a half to go through your deck, I should be able to get the whole story by just looking at these. And some of these are better than others. Like, it doesn't make sense to say testimonials. Maybe customers love us, or positive testimonials. Like, what is the so what you want me to glean by reading this? So I think don't waste space by saying problem solution. Also, showing a big problem using brand names like JP Morgan, P&G, and Uber also implies that this software could service those brands. And this solution slide is horrible. The reason it's horrible is because it's using industry jargon like DSP. It's never been defined. You're expecting me to know as an investor that this is a demand side platform and really what that means. This company, like I was telling you, doesn't really have the ability to do a demo. It's really a back-end technology, and it doesn't look that good when you demo it. And so they did kind of a user story. I think you could do a much better user story that's easier to read, but it does, show a good brand and then some key results of that. But I would like to see a little bit more of like a slide split with a before and after. Like, what is life like before your product for the user, and what's it like after, and make it very clear and understandable. But like I said, a better solution is if you, the CEO, could show some part of the product working, or a member of your team can, or if you have to, a video. It does not have to be slick. It's more important to show me, don't tell me about your product. I do love this slide, and this is a great slide that works. This is a little more on the showing, and it clearly shows how their AI works better than humans. Too often when entrepreneurs tell me they use machine learning and AI, I think no and no. Most VCs are very skeptical that AI exists and that machine learning is nothing more than Python. And so you have to show what your technology is actually doing, but more importantly, how is it leading to a better outcome for your users? And as you see here, the red is when their customers were buying ads without their software, the blues when they were buying it. So they could clearly show that their AI is doing something different and their product is doing something different, more so important than what their AI is doing. I love having testimonials in decks. I think sometimes they're not in there. I would encourage you to find ways to add them. These are some of the benefits and the results. Certainly, this isn't a great slide. And I think the traction slide is finally here. I would have had this traction slide before these two. But it is what it is. I think you can just list your traction. I don't think you need to be too fancy. Showing a big market, 147 billion. I think that's good. Also showing a quote that it's growing. I think that's fine. This is the trends and opportunities slide. So why is this relevant today? AppLovin and these companies were recently acquired, so the market is consolidating. That's showing that there's an opportunity for this company to be acquired. GDPR and the California Protection Act law has made advertising difficult. And the global ad spend in 2020 is 98 billion. So whatever those reasons are that this should be invested in today needs to be on this slide. I would argue that this slide is just probably a C+ or a B-. It could be better. But it drives the point home of oftentimes it's not on there. Why now? And here is, what is their true edge? We already saw this slide. Their growth strategy, this is not a very good slide, but the one thing that saved them is they had a fundraising or a pipeline of 550 companies, and many of them were name brand. Business model, this could have been much simpler. Let me just show the things. The roadmap I do like, when they're going to hire, what they're actually going to be doing. But showing the architecture description, what does it use? Is it open source or is it not? There's my Python joke, but you do want to show that. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be in the first deck. As you see, this is in a backup, but showing what, if you're using machine learning or AI or data analytics, whatever you want to use, how exactly are you using it? You don't have to give away your proprietary sauce, but you do have to lay out to me what exactly how exactly your machine learning is working. And that's really a conversation to do with your CTO. One thing I want to show really quickly is it gets beat over entrepreneurs' head that you have to start with the problem. You have to start with the problem. Well, you don't always have to. And here's an example where you could start with the team. So here's a first slide where in 2012, we did X. We flew a plane. In 2014, we sold to Google. Then we built Mohawk, and that did a NASDAQ. Look, you don't need these kind of successes. You could say, I did this, I did this. And then the common theme is, I wanted to build something that meaningfully impacted 1 billion lives. And then today, we're building a security company that's going to do those. And so tie it to that. Tie your startup to, here's the culmination of our team's careers. And that's why we're building this security company, because we like building high impact things. Or maybe it would be less random than this company. But I think it's a very good way, and something that doesn't work for all entrepreneurs, because so much of Dex is it just depends. This is just another way that you could look at it and think about positioning your deck. And for some VCs, this might work better than others, and you might have to have a couple decks. But you certainly can lead with your team. You just need to tie your experience and the experience of your team and make it almost like a water or like dominoes that are building. And this is the culmination of your career. Another thing, especially for those, I know this probably doesn't apply too much because fintech is so well understood in Vegas. But if you have a part of fintech, or you have a product that might not be thought of as a big idea or a good idea, you can lead with the opportunity. So this product here, Nurture, is an e-commerce website that sells chairs that moms in America use. They're called rockers. I don't know if you have them, but this chair actually rocks like a rocking chair. And so all this website does at this point is sell that chair. So I'm sure the entrepreneurs could have came up with a compelling statement how mothers work very hard and they need to relax and nurse their babies in a rocking chair. But that might not have gone over so well, quite frankly, to the male vulture capital audience, which unfortunately is being pitched. So what they did is they led with the opportunity. And something that someone might not have known is that children's furniture is actually a $30 billion market. And over 3 million, almost 4 million babies were born in the US alone, and 88% of the children were born to millennials. And what they're pitching is a millennial focused rocker and furniture company. So sometimes, I'm just throwing it out there, you can lead with the opportunity. So it's not a one size take all answer. Okay. Another thing, and this kind of came up in the first deck, but I see it a lot, is how you describe your technology. So this is an AI powered security platform. So the problem is that there's threats and infections all over the world. You know, the solution is real-time surveillance and messenger-based security. It's basically just using AI, facial recognition for cameras. But one of the things that you need to be clear is what exactly, give me a second, is your technology doing? So traffic analysis, that's what the AI does. The AI does threat detections. It can detect smoke and fire and showing a picture of how it does it. It has audio analytics that detects gunshots and explosions. Another thing is, if you are indeed using AI, is how big is your training data set? Here they're talking about 50 million images. Okay. Here's another thing where it's showing the AI. It does people identification, vehicle identification, behavioral analytics. Again, the 50 million images, but showing exactly, it looks at license plates and reads them. It looks at people's faces and monitors if they're on a watch list. I mean, perhaps this is scaring some of you, but the point is that it's very, very clear what you're saying the AI does. Don't just say we use AI, machine learning to bring unique insights to enterprise businesses. That's just a bunch of jargon. I don't know what that means. Here is another example of the competition slide. You see this a lot. But what I like is they put their own spin and really showed deep analysis. By doing so, they had this arrows that basically said, none of these two boxes have collaborative security. So making that unique point of view. One of the things I showed here, and maybe it wasn't clear, but like key investment metrics. You can also just do a current status. I would like more compelling statements at the top, like the so what and the takeaway. But here's like the compelling statements on why you should invest. And then, you know, financials. I would like to see, you know, some metrics about the financials, but you could kind of see it here. But this is really good at the top, showing that pipeline, the revenue growth, where they're going to be country-wise. Probably a better example of the technology stack than what Biddy showed is, you know, a lot of people go back and forth whether it's best to use open source or not, but clearly showing the stack so an investor could understand it. How does it work? Just using simple graphics of companies, you know, from Docker to Kubernetes, so they could really see how this works. And again, this is also playing into the fools, the fear of looking stupid. So yes, this is some unique AI doing some powerful stuff, but it's built on top of a familiar Linux stack. Basically the same stack that Google itself is built on. So this is where you create those equivalents where you're not going to make someone look stupid, where your tech isn't so deep that it's not plausible. And here's kind of a comparison to their cloud. Again, getting into the details of their tech. Again, these are all backups, but you have to be able to articulate this stuff at some point during your pitch. All right. Give me a second. All right. Couple other just quick ideas. Then I'll pause for questions. So I really like this one in terms of complicated products. Here's a test card, the results, and then you get recommendations. It's using urine, saliva, and blood. And then you send those recommendations into an app, you get the recommendations. It's developed a patented system that enables lab accuracy. And then if you want to read about it, you can, but you can get the high level takeaway. It makes its own proprietary chemistries. Again, if you want to read about it, you can, but it's showing quick kind of pictures as well to kind of guide you through it. And then yeah, I think that's pretty much it from that slide. A lot of this gets a little, not admittedly not the best, but I really do like how this is a very complicated product, but it simplified it for me. I could just scroll and quickly understand. And then if I want to read about the details prior to setting a call with you, I can, or I can get the gist of it. And then maybe I check the team slide. Okay, they got a good advisory team. They got a bunch of doctors, 4 multi-million-dollar startups, 3 exits. Okay, this person's going to get a phone call every time. And that's how fast a VC would make a decision on a deck like this. Okay. One of the things that I kind of beat up on last call was this idea that there's not enough detail around your plans. And one of the decks that I found, it doesn't really apply perfectly. And I think the plan's actually a little crazy and not the best, but I do like the way they laid out the plan. So here's a robot that's starting with children that uses social emotional AI to help individuals with loneliness. But I love how they call this out. And then you got the kid with the robot, so you can totally get what it does. I hate this slide. I don't even know what this means. I guess they're saying it could apply to a lot of industries. I have no idea why life coaching isn't the same size, but what do I know? Again, this is good because you can understand the differentiators. What's horrible is I don't see anything really on traction. It's all focused around the product. But what I do like is, as a backup deck or a second deck, is the our strategy. And then breaking it down into 3 phases: formation, growth, maturity, or I like crawl, walk, run. And then describing what you're actually going to do in those phases and what you're going to do. In the case of this deck, they get a little crazy because they go from like a children's toy all the way to helping the elderly. But even if you were going to be focused in fintech, you could say, this is what we're going to do in phase 1, this is what we're going to do in phase 2, and this is what we're going to do in phase 3, and really have that plan available for a second or a third or a fourth meeting with the VC, so you can explain to them that you have a good strategy to get there. Because I think that gets left out a lot. Okay, so the last thing that I just wanted to show you guys is, I'll just show you up here, is those of you that just do not know how to use PowerPoint or Figma or Keynote and want to build good solid decks. There's this company here. It's called Pitch. It's free. And I've been using them, but let me see if I can. Oh, I can't find. Well, if you go here to browse all, you have all different decks. So you can use this for beyond just pitch decks, but you can, there's a bunch of pitch deck templates, but you can go in here, create a presentation. I mean, it is really easy. And you can go here, new slide, and then you could pick the template. So here's your problem slide. Here's your solution, or another problem slide, whatever. And then you could just type in, you could replace the pictures if you want, or you could just use them. So if you need something that's clean and usable and you're not good at kind of standard stuff, you can use this. And then you could download it as a PDF. And so it works pretty well. So I know that I was fast, but I wanted to give you guys time to answer questions. And so, or ask questions, sorry. So does anyone have any questions, either as it relates to this or anything as it relates to pitch decks? I'd be happy to answer them. It looks like, hold on, let me check the chat. Abraham is raising his hand. Do you have a question, Abraham?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Derek.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. So, so you talked about the opportunity. So as you know, Collect is in the payments industry, and we are bounded. I think the market is kind of large. We have about 4 unicorns already within the space, the payment space in Nigeria, and we are also playing in that space too. And we get asked a lot, oh, why are you different from this guy? How are you different from that guy? Right. So I was talking to someone some days back about, so he asked, how are you different? And I answered and was like, well, this is how I would think you are different, right? So normally I would do a kind of competition slide and talk about one unique feature we have, even though we know that the computer can double that down in like 1 day or 2 days because they have more engineers than we do, right? So he said, does your product meet the core of the solution? Does it meet the minimum requirements to solve the solution, right? And he said, look at the banking industry. Most people have more than 2 banks that they use. How can you convince the investor that your solution meets the minimum requirements and you can also get a cut of that market? So what I'm trying to ask is, how do you present, if you are trying to pay, if you're in a very competitive space like payments, how do you want to make sure your first your competition deck and your opportunity deck is so distinct that you're telling investor that, oh, I'm in this space, I want to compete for market share, right? And also I want to be different.
Yeah, so this is what I would say. I mean, basically what the advice you've been given or what you're thinking around is kind of what's famously called the Pepsi Coca-Cola argument, right? Is there's Coca-Cola already on the market and we want to be Pepsi. Basically, we want to be number 2, and enough people buy sugar water that you can have $2 billion Pepsi and Coke markets, right? I think what you want to do is you want to find a unique value proposition around how you're positioning the product. So if if what you have essentially already exists and you're trying to position it to a different market, then that is a unique value proposition. And so what I would say is, like, let's just say, for example, and I don't know if, let's just say that you wanted to create a new bank in Nigeria. You would say, well, I guess you guys have bank sponsors. So, but if you wanted to create a new bank, let's just say not in Nigeria, in the United States, mostly in the US, banks are 100 years old. They're archaic, they're old. Nobody over 50 really likes dealing with them. They expect things to be digital. We're going to create a new bank that's focused on millennials, that has these features and this focus. And that's going to be unique and different compared to all the old archaic banks. And that is what makes me unique, is my focus and my niche on this particular consumer and archetype and that persona. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say if you're going to do a product in a space that's already done before, I would definitely have a different market or a niche or a focus of that product, because at least in the US, which I know more about, banks are broad. They haven't been disrupted for a very long time. We're going to change banks and change the focus so it's geared towards a modern consumer, and we're modernizing it. Or there hasn't been a bank that's geared towards children that are 15 years old, but children have money and they want to save it. So we're going to create a bank focused around them. So I would find that focus around the user and make that unique and different to what's on the market versus the Pepsi Coke argument. I'm going to mess up your name. Temi Tope.
Hi there. Thanks. I represent Get Equity, head of growth here and co-founder. Now, my question because of always we have short times to pitch to investors, usually sometimes 5 minutes or less, and you want to tell a story, right? Which, of course, you want to tell the story of your business and where you're coming from and where you're heading to. Usually, because again, most investors don't look through all the deck. What has been, from your experience, the most critical, like, things that you should have? And again, sometimes it messes up the arrangement of how you want to tell the story. What is your best use, real life scenarios? It's just more about the one-liner, solution, problem, problem, solution, traction, what you're raising at, and any other story you want to add, so that they can have most of all the nitty-gritty of what you're trying to do, and then leave the rest for question. Has that worked, or do you feel you should run through the motions? I mean, yes, you've taken us through about these 18 pages. I'm just living in the sense whereby I have 5 minutes to talk about the most salient points. They might not be able to run through all.
Yeah, so no, you bring up a good point. And it's kind of like you have this deck, and the most you're ever going to realistically get through, at least in the first meeting, is traction, at least in the order that I presented it. But look, I think as far as the best stories that I think resonate with people are when you can highlight a conflict, or more dramatically, a war. And that's a little over dramatic. But just what you really want to highlight in the problem is that something's been brewing and brewing and brewing and brewing. And for too long, people have been prevented with this opportunity, or prevented with this solution. And we are here to pop that bubble or solve that challenge now. And, it's for too long, hardworking people haven't had access to their money. And that's prevented them from feeding their families, especially during times of COVID. Like creating that war that's going on between people needing money and having access to their money, or whatever the solution may be, finding it very quickly. For too long, people have been spending hours and hours and hours in traffic, preventing them from doing so many things that are productive. We're going to solve it by doing this. And like finding that relatable moment. And also telling it in a way, the reason why the war is important is like there's thousands or millions of people that feel just like this. So I think finding that emotional tone, and then, like I said, now you've got them believing that it's a good idea. What is the proof that you have to back that up? And I would get to the traction as quick as possible. Does that answer your question? Okay, hopefully. Abraham. Do you have a question? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, not really. I think my hands were still raised.
Okay. I didn't know if you had another question or not. No worries. You're good. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Well, if anyone has questions,
yeah. So I'll come again and ask about so like I'm just asking questions based on feedback I've gotten so far. Mostly about how you want to represent your traction, so it's easy for understand your journey and how you want to get there. So you touched on that, and I think it's really very important for us to kind of understand how to really explain, even when you are kind of very early and maybe don't have the resources to get, that needed traction, to blow people's mind away. How do you want to, represent this? Someone gave me feedback that was very, very times ago, right? He asked, what is the average revenue per customer in a month, right? And I said, oh, maybe it's $10. And he said, oh, that's here. And I said, oh, would that be $120? So yeah, that's it. Tell me if you're making $120 per customer per year, then how much revenue would you make if you had 1,000 customers, right? Prior to that, I never really knew how to represent this data like that. Trying to help the investor think through your journey and how to make sure you can paint this big picture of where you're trying to go to for the investor. So that would be what are scenarios you've seen, and how can we make this happen when you don't really have the big traction, but you wanted to paint a picture for the investor.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a really good question, and I appreciate. I'm really glad you asked it, because so number one is my definition of traction at an early stage is why your idea is good, or why you're sure you're going to succeed, and what do you have that backs up in data. Not just like, well, I used to work in this industry and I know it's good, or, I talked to a few people and they think it's a good idea. Is what is the data that you have? Preferably that's users, that's revenue, that's growth rate. There's a lot of those things, but it can be, you've recruited a world-class team with PhDs. It can be you have pre-orders or signups or website traffic showing interest. You got to show as much as you can to validate. But the other thing, and this is where the go-to-market slides, I think, get a little weak. And I'm not saying yours is, But I think what has to happen is you have to connect the dots for the VC. So it's like today I have 50 customers that are making $100 each. Tomorrow, I'm going to get 1,000 customers by doing this. And then I'm going to get 1 million customers by doing this. And that's going to equal to this much revenue. And I think like what happens is a lot of people don't describe how they're going to get the 100, how they're going to get the 1,000. You have to show that bouncy ball. And we're going to get 1,000 customers by getting this many web hits. We're going to get 5,000 web inquiries, and we think that's going to lead to 1,000 customers. The way we're going to get 5,000 web inquiries is we're going to do this on social media, this on blogging, this on podcasts, and we think that's going to lead, to this many potential customers. And, really kind of showing that you've thought about it from a quantitative standpoint and doing the math all the way down for the investor. That's what a go-to-market strategy is. Not just listing social media, PR, events, blogging. Like that doesn't really tell me that you've done any analysis. Really saying, I want to get to this many customers, it's going to get to this. The other thing that you need to take account for, and even if you don't think it's true, investors have seen it so many times, is that marketing doesn't always scale. So just because you have, a $1 acquisition cost now, and you've acquired 10,000 customers that way, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to get, 1 million customers at $1 each. It just doesn't scale that way in marketing. And I've seen that so many times. So I think just acknowledging that things aren't going to be perfect and take that into account with your projections, and not just doing it like a simple math problem like I was doing it, but showing you put in the real rigor and analysis, I think would help answer that question. Was that helpful, or did it just confuse you?
Yeah, that was helpful. That was helpful. I think you kind of touched more on the go-to-market slides, and I think you talked about so so I went back. I was preparing a slide. I had to go back and delete because I put marketing, SEO, and so I went back to delete it. So thanks for making that clear.
Yeah, no worries. I put my link tree in there. I put it in last time, I think. So feel free to ask questions, but you can also reach out to me as well if you want some feedback.
Can we share our decks?
Yeah, send it over to me. I'll send you some feedback. I prefer if you could send it to me in either PowerPoint or Google, something where I could comment on the slide itself, like super fast. But yeah, I'm happy to look at your decks if you guys want to send them to me.
Sure.
I'll give you feedback. Just keep in mind that I'm really busy, so that means I'm only going to tell you the things that I think should improve. It doesn't mean it's all bad. I'm just finding the things that I think can be improved. If you want to send it to me in Figma, you can send it to me in Figma. I have a Figma account. I can comment in Figma, but I'm going to comment in Figma. So yeah, that's cool. But I would also say that I think if it were me and I was like looking for capital and I was early stage, don't forget about like friends and families and just getting the money in the bank. I think if this is your first startup, I don't think you should be focusing on optimizing your fundraising round. And let me just tell you that if your company turns into Paystack or Flutterwave, you're going to be rich, and your family's going to be rich, and your grandkids are going to be rich no matter what. I think where the optimization and like the skills of VC and knowing all the preferences and preferred shares, and that only really comes into play if and when you have a small exit. But to be honest, if you get a small exit, like maybe you'll miss out on a little bit of money if you were optimized, but you just use that as part of your resume and you go start another company. I think it's just much more plausible to focus on getting the money in the bank than worrying about optimizing the round. I mean, that's just something I see so much. A company sent me a deck today, and they're trying to get a $9 million valuation with, $5K in MRR, and he's just trying to optimize the round rather than, get some money in the bank. So I would pay attention to what the market is, and get the money in the bank and use safe notes when you can, and drive forward. So that's just another piece of advice. All right, I think I'm gonna let everyone have 27 minutes of their day back, unless there's any more questions.
Yeah. Hi, Derek. So
Hello.
my question is more about it's actually not concerning the deck, but more about just something you touched on lastly, which is the family and friend round. If you're running a family and friend round, would you still take it more like you were speaking to investors and go through the flow, or would you maybe cut back on everyone? Because again, they know you, they just more about backing you than even what you're trying to do. So that's one. But if you do decide not to do a family and friend round and you have investors who maybe understand the industry, are there punches in terms of what you might want to do differently? Because again, you might talk about differentiation and they might be saying that doesn't work in the industry because your model is different, but they understand what has worked in the industry. So, I mean, how do you deal with those two tangential problems? Because they're coming from a point of experience and you're coming from a point of changing how things work.
Yeah, no, I mean, so there's a lot of questions. So let me kind of address them all. And feel free to follow up if I forget a couple. But I think, so let me just give you a few thoughts on friends and family rounds. So number one is, and this really applies to all pitches, I think sometimes there's pitches where you show your deck and you go through, and sometimes there's pitches where you just have a conversation, right? Like we've all been there. And sometimes you wind up not showing the deck. In my opinion, you should always have the deck in front of you. And if it's friends or family, you would probably be casual and wind up not sharing your screen or presenting it like that. But I would still have the deck in front of you because it's going to keep you organized. And you still want to explain to this person what you're going to be doing, what you're doing, why this is a good idea, how this is going to make money. But largely, as you pointed out, they're betting on you. A couple other things that I've seen where I think you can consider, because the friends and family is actually triple F's, friends, families, and fools, right? And one of the things that I think you could do is a lot of times entrepreneurs ask for advisors to join their companies. And certainly I think you should do that. But I think one of the opportunities that sometimes gets missed is why not ask them to invest a little bit of money? Why not ask them to invest, 5,000 US dollars and become an advisor so they have skin in the game? Not saying that everybody will do it, but I don't think it hurts. And that's really a method of getting a little bit of money in the bank. Another thing is, you're right, angels or people that invest small checks really believe that they're giving you intellectual capital along with their financial capital, and they want to provide input. And the best I can tell you is it's a lot like dating. You're not always going to click with everybody. I also think you need to be coachable. And so, I think, look, I give advice to entrepreneurs. If they disagree with me, the best way to disagree with me and have a productive discussion is to show data and say, look, we've tried that, or here's the context to why we're doing it. And usually the discussion will go well. And a lot of times I will wind up showing data too, and you can have productive disagreements. And so I think if you're really interested in an investor and you don't totally agree with their idea, there's nothing wrong with trying to come up with a quick experiment to test his hypothesis. And you might be right or they might be right, but test the hypothesis, provide data, and then have a follow-up discussion. Or typically the reason why investors give horrible advice is they just don't have the context. And so you need to say, like, look, I respect what you're saying, but I want to provide a little bit more context. But if you don't click, you don't click. I would tell you that there is a little bit of a fine line between, making the investor feel like you're not coachable and being confident in what you're doing. So I think if you say to the investor, that sounds, I want to hear some context on why we're not doing that. I think I can put together an experiment to run that model and test it. But ultimately, Mr. Investor, I do need capital for an experiment like that. So that's just some random thoughts on how I would address those points.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Anyone else have any other questions? Awesome. All right, well, contact me. I will send this deck so you have the links as well. And best of luck and congratulations on your journey this far. I know that it's a lot of work, so keep getting after it. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Derek, for your time. Thank you for leading us in the session. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, could the cohort please stay? I just wanted to check a couple of things. I sent out a tech due diligence form for everyone to fill. I've only received one from Zemocard, so I'm just trying to figure out the rest of the teams. If you could please send that out to me. That's it's very important for me to have sent it to your technology mentors ahead of your one-on-ones tomorrow, so they at least have a view of where you're at. So it helps the conversations as well. So if you haven't sent me your pre-work tech due diligence, please send it across. Thank you. Hi guys, was I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
Yes,
speaking to you now.
Super, thank you. Looking forward to receiving your pre-works.
All right, thanks. Bye.